When we ask, who is Turkic, is it a matter of blood or something else? The hazaras of Afghanistan are often the subject of this question. Genetically, many studies show they carry a significant portion of Turkic ancestry, but does that make them Turkic? I will try to break down why they are not a Turkic people in the cultural or linguistic sense, despite their partial Turkic genetic heritage, and why DNA alone doesn't determine ethno-linguistic identity. Let's first define what we mean by Turkic. A Turkic identity is not just about where your ancestors come from, it's about language, cultural heritage, historical consciousness, and social identity. You're considered Turkic if you speak a Turkic language or share cultural traits like oral traditions, music, structures, and nomadic patterns, or you can trace your identity to certain empires or traditions like the Oghuz, Kipchaks, or Karluks. So while genetics can play a role in historical origins, it is language and culture that define Turkicness today. So, Hazaras are a Persian-speaking people primarily found in Afghanistan. Their native language is Hazaragi, a dialect of Persian, and they follow Persianate cultural traditions. Historically, Hazaras have often been viewed as a marginalized group, largely Shia Muslim in a Sunni-dominant country. Their origins are complex, with some descent from Mongol and Turkic military units that settled in the region after the 13th century. Genetic studies do support this, showing they have some East Asian and Central Asian ancestry, particularly on the paternal side. But over centuries, Hazaras assimilated linguistically and culturally into the Persianate sphere. They no longer speak a Turkic or Mongolic language, they don't follow steppe Turkic customs, and they don't identify as part of the Turkic world like Uzbeks, Kazakhs, or Turkmens do. Here's the core issue. Genetics doesn't determine identity, especially Turkic identity. I will try to break down why using some examples. Example number 1, many Tajiks in Central Asia have Turkic admixture, sometimes even more than Hazaras, but they speak Persian, identify as an Iranic people, and trace their roots to ancient Sogdian and Bactrian civilizations. In Turkey today, many ethnic Turks are genetically similar to Greeks, Armenians, or Kurds. Does that mean they're not Turkic? Of course not. They speak Turkish, follow Turkic customs, and identify with Turkic heritage. If we define identity by DNA, we end up in a weird place. That's biological essentialism, not anthropology. Counter arguments that I often hear are, well, but Hazaras have 30 to 40% East Asian or Turkic DNA. Doesn't that make them ethnically Turkic? Not necessarily. And here's where we need to make an important distinction between genetic ethnicity and cultural linguistic ethnicity. Some ethnic identities like Somalis, Armenians, or Koreans do have relatively tight genetic clusters. They lived in the same region for thousands of years with little large-scale assimilation. In those cases, language and culture and genetics often overlap, but Turkic identity is different. It's not bound to a single bloodline or place. Turkic people expanded from the Central Asian steppe and assimilated thousands of diverse groups along the way. In Anatolia, many Greeks, Armenians, and Kurds adopted the Turkish language and became Turks. In Central Asia, many Iranian people became Turkified, such as the Bactrians, Sogdians, and Khwarezmians. In the Volga region, some Turkic-speaking groups are genetically Finno-Ugric, like the Chuvash. So, Turkic is more like a language-based cultural umbrella than a tight ethnic genome. It's transmitted like Arab or Latin American, not inherited through blood alone. If we judge Turkicness by DNA, we'd run into some contradictions. Some Tajiks have more Turkic DNA than some Uzbeks from certain regions, but they're not Turkic. Even some Persians in Khorasan or Mazandaran show Central Asian admixture, but nobody calls them Turkic. So, Turkicness is about participating in the Turkic world, speaking the language, following the customs, and identifying with the historical and cultural narrative. Hazaras, despite partial Turkic ancestry, have no living link to that identity. Well, but if someone becomes fully assimilated, doesn't their ancestry still matter? It does, in history, in genealogy, in population genetics. But in ethno-linguistic terms, ancestry becomes secondary once assimilation is complete. A Persian-speaking community that's been separated from Turkic culture for centuries is no longer Turkic, just because some of their great-great-grandfathers were. Another counter-argument is that, well, Uzbeks are Turkic and also have Persian influence. Why can't Hazaras be the same? Because Uzbeks speak a Turkic language and identify with Turkic culture, even if they have Persian influence. Hazaras do not. It's not about influence, it's about the core of identity. Now, you might run across some Hazaras, especially online, who insist that Hazaras are Turkic or want to be included in the broader Turkic world. Why does this happen? There are a few reasons. The first one is that some Hazaras take pride in descending from Mongol or Chinggisid troops, many of whom were Turkified or had Turkic allies. They see this as a prestigious heritage, and it's historically significant. But ancestry doesn't equal identity. Having Turkic ancestors doesn't override centuries of cultural separation. Another reason could be geopolitical affiliation or strategic identity. In a region where ethnic groups compete for recognition, rights, and resources, aligning with a powerful transnational identity like turkicness can seem advantageous. It can provide solidarity with Turkic nations like Turkey or Azerbaijan or Uzbekistan, especially in contrast to the marginalization within Afghanistan. Another reason could be misunderstanding what Turkic really means. Some Hazara people associate turkicness purely with genetic origin, which, as we've covered, is misleading. But here's the key point that I would like to bring up. Self-identification must still align with cultural reality. A community doesn't become Turkic by wanting to be or by pointing to a 13th century ancestry. It becomes Turkic by living, speaking, and transmitting that culture, which Hazara people don't. That's not an insult or denial of the history. It's just recognition of where they truly stand today. As a Persian-speaking, Persianite people with a diverse ancestral background, just like how many Latin Americans may have indigenous, African, or European blood, but are culturally Spanish-speaking mestizos, not purely one origin. So, why does this debate even matter? Because forcing people into identities based on blood risks erasing their real lived culture. Saying Hazaras are Turkic because of DNA is like denying their Persianite history, their unique struggles, and their sense of self. It encourages racial thinking where ethnicity becomes about genes rather than human experience, language, tradition, and belonging. If we accepted Turkicness as a genetic category, then we'd have to call many Tajiks Turkic or many Turks not Turkic and just Greeks or Armenians. So, are Hazaras Turkic? Historically, they carry traces of Turkic and Mongol ancestry, so genetically, as we've covered, yes, many do have Central Asian DNA. But identity isn't stored in DNA. Turkicness is not inherited, it's learned, spoken, practiced, and passed on through culture. The Hazara people speak Persian, their worldview, literature, customs, and social fabric are shaped by the Persianite world, not by Turkic languages, nomadic traditions, or shared Turkic memory. Trying to claim Turkic identity based on ancient bloodlines misses what Turkic really is: a living, evolving, cultural linguistic family that stretches from Turkey to Siberia, not just a percentage on a genetic test. I hope this was informative and you guys, learned something from this. And if you have counter arguments or whatever, you can comment them. I'll probably ignore them, but you can put them. Yeah, and that's it. Bye bye.